I'm Adam. I'm half Syrian, half Egyptian. Born in the U.S.
My name's Liliana. I'm a senior in biotech, and I'm half Palestinian, half American.
I'm Amelia. I'm a third-year chemistry major. I'm from New York, and I'm Croatian.
I'm Diego. I'm studying biology. Both my parents are immigrants from Spain, and I spend most of my summers there.
They'll just assume that everyone else will just cater to their American.
Or just speak English.
The way that Americans act is much more outgoing, I'd say. Yeah, and much less self-aware too.
Much less self-aware? What do you mean
louder,
by that? And I'm thinking about, the ethnic groups in Syria, the ethnic groups in Egypt, and I think here in the United States, we are this vastly complex, multicultural society, right?
I think in Syria, people are much more willing and able to live with each other and be peaceful to one another in comparison to here.
Which is surprising given the Civil War.
Aren't you afraid of getting shot every day? And they're like, people are getting shot all the time. And I was like,
the ultimate goal, I guess, all Syrians want to go to the U.S.
What do you all see from your experience of being outside the U.S., being here in the U.S.? When do you know that you've encountered an American?
I feel like it's hard to tell, but I think culturally, even just looking, if you're in Europe, I feel like the Americans can get spotted out really easily.
Yeah.
Just by
What do you
how they
see?
dress.
Because I agree with you. I feel the same way when I'm in Europe. What do you see?
I think it really depends about what country you're in. I was in Copenhagen this summer, and the Danes, I feel dressed pretty nice, posh, but then an American, as soon as somebody had shorts on, they're already flagged as an American. And just I don't know how they walk, and the Danes were really reserved.
Hold the mic really
Sorry,
close.
the Danes were really reserved as people as well, and the Americans would be very outward, speaking with others. And stuff.
So it goes with what Ayush said.
Yeah.
Ayush.
But I'm not sure that's the same. I think.
But that's your experience of it. I would say it's similar. No, it's good. Thanks, dude. That's cool.
Having grown up in New York City, I feel like I didn't experience your typical American until I actually came to Penn State. This was the place where I saw the most white Americans as one would imagine it. I generally find Americans to be louder and more, not outgoing necessarily, but they're very noticeable. Americans wear big brands. You're right. When you go to Europe, you can tell exactly who's American because they have on their sneakers with the brands and Adidas pants, or they're Russian. But,
So in Croatia,
yeah,
is that what you see?
you can tell a lot. I'm from a part of Croatia that doesn't necessarily get as many tourists because I'm not from the really pretty part. I'm from the capital. But when you're on the coast, which is where most people go, it's very. You can tell when an American tourist is there, they leave tips. It's just they treat, they assume that everyone else will just be American as well. They speak English. Granted, most people in Europe do speak English at this point, but they'll just assume that everyone else will just cater to their Americanness.
Or just speak English? Because
exactly.
if you don't know a language, I do this in Korea, right? I just start speaking English because I'm in lots of places I do because I'm well, unless I'm in a Spanish-speaking country, then I speak Spanish. Would you agree with that? That idea of just...
I think it depends on what country you're in. I feel in Denmark, I also went to Iceland, I would speak English immediately.
Yeah.
But in a country such as France, I would try a little bit.
Yeah.
Just because I don't think they were as English speaking. In Spain as well. Spain,
Yeah.
I encounter a lot less
People
who
speak
speak English. So I, of course, would speak Spanish. My friends would try in Spanish as well.
Yeah.
So I think it's really dependent.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm with you on that. How about you? What tips you off about what makes someone an American from what you see? Thinking about your life in Jordan.
Yeah, so in my family, being an American really just means to have citizenship. I think that there's no set, there's stereotypes of being American, but my grandma who was raised in Palestine, my dad who was raised in Jordan, The second they got their citizenships, they're American. And
Meaning they just claimed it?
yes, they identify as American.
Yep. Yep.
And
We-
so I don't think like you can necessarily tell who's American or not because you don't know their life story and if they identify that way or not.
So I wonder if that's part of like this American thing of so many immigrants to the U.S., right? With citizenship, it matters. It matters so much. The people who want citizenship and get citizenship and like really embrace that in some kind of way. That seems like it's in some strange way a uniquely American thing or something. Right?
Yeah, the only time I saw my dad cry was the day he got his citizenship.
Yeah, it's so wild, bro. How about you, man? What makes makes someone an American?
So I'm going to speak mostly on my time in Syria because that's where, like, I guess I identify more as Syrian than Egyptian. But you can tell on the way that people, like, speak. Like, if they speak English, everyone's going to come to you and be like, talk English to me because everyone wants to learn English. But also, like, the way that people dress, the way people talk, the way that they just, like, act in general, you can tell.
What's like the act in general? What do you mean?
The way that, like, Americans act is much more outgoing, I'd say.
So it's
And-
again what he said earlier.
Yeah, and much less self-aware too.
Much less self-aware.
Like
What do you
they're
mean
louder.
by that?
They're, yeah. I mean,
You're shaking your head on that. Do you agree with it? What do you agree with?
I mean, I just think that like from my time having been in Europe, like if there's someone yelling, if there's someone being annoying, most likely they are American because it's just we're louder here. Like I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I agree that Americans are like abnormally loud outside of the U.S. for some reason.
Yeah. What else do you see? That's really fascinating, actually. Yeah. I mean, it's a stereotype, right? But it's a stereotype that I hear over and over, and I have witnessed it in all of my travels, throughout my life, the last 40 years, And sometimes me, I'm the loud American. I'm like the obnoxious American, and sometimes I just really embrace that because I'm like, I'm an American, man. So just be an American. It's okay. It's like it's all good. What's something you see about the U.S. that other people might not see if they haven't really left the U.S.?
I feel like there's a connection between people who have been able to or who aren't American, like white people.
Or all people, just white people, or all people?
I mean, I guess just American.
I mean, like there's this. So I'm thinking about Syria, for example, right? And I'm thinking about or Egypt. And I'm thinking about, the ethnic groups in Syria, the ethnic groups in Egypt. And I think here in the United States, we are this vastly complex multicultural society, right? And how is that? Like how?
I think in Syria, people are much more like willing and able to live with each other and be peaceful to one another in comparison to here.
Which is surprising given the Civil War. But it doesn't matter because that's the Civil War up here, but you're talking day to day. There is a way in which, I would agree with you. Yeah, this goes to like the Arab world piece a little bit. Yeah. That's really interesting, man. That people are, even in a country that is now mired in this, almost 10-year Civil War, there's, with like 4.5 or 5 million refugees out of Syria, right? And yet what you're saying is like people are able to somehow live together more easily than here in the United States.
I think it's very rare to see conflict like between citizens.
Yeah.
There in comparison to here. It's something you see like daily here.
Dude, it's it's so interesting, right? Yeah, and we don't see that much really here either. I mean, if you really think about it, look at this room and stuff, but still.
I think America, kind of going off what he said, is a lot more individual-based. And so that allows you to, like, have more freedom in who you are.
Yeah.
But then, like, looking at Jordan and other Middle East countries that are very community-based,
Yep.
There's a strong support network and stuff, but I feel like there's also, like, more societal norms almost of ways to act. versus America, it's more free. You can act however you want.
Yeah, so there's this like this moral order, this way of assessing what's right and what's wrong, like what's good and what's bad, right? Our ethics, our morality, and how we think about those things, and we're all we are assessing right and wrong with everything we do all day long. And so there's a moral order can be more communitarian based, meaning like before I make decisions, before I act in some way, I'm going to look out around the people around me and decide, hey, what are they doing? What are they thinking? Or I'm going to just decide, well, what do I want to do? It doesn't matter what they want to do. It's just going to be what I want to do. And so what you're saying is like, yeah, you got these cultures that are more community oriented or communitarian oriented. And so people naturally have an instinctual way of looking at other people before they think about themselves. Do you have anything to? Do either of you have anything to add to that? Like this.
I agree with what you said. I was just gonna I think the silliest example is just table manners. It was so emphasized growing up, how I should hold my fork, how I should hold my knife, and then I came here in the dining halls and I was like, whoa. They're grabbing their fork like this. The knife is like this. It's I don't know what's going on, but it does, they don't care.
It all works.
I think that's also a good thing too.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah.
Comparative, my grandma saw that,
so what? Yeah, and I think that's also that's not just a your family thing. That's a Spanish thing. Actually.
Yeah.
And what do people? What do you know? What do the four of you know about the United States that people who haven't traveled to the United States not know? So people in Croatia, Spain, Jordan, Syria, Egypt, what do you know being here that they don't know? What do you see that they don't see? The stereotypes they have that you really are nah.
I think a lot of Europeans really glorify it. A lot of Europeans I interacted with, especially this summer in Denmark, were this America's great, but then they also are
they also critique it.
They're I was just talking to some kids at a park, and they're aren't you afraid of getting shot every day? And they're people are getting shot all the time, and I was I don't even know how to respond to that, but
okay.
I think they have hyper their impression of America is really drastic.
Okay, right. So it's you watch the news and you think that we have mass shootings going on every day, and we do, of course, have shootings going on every day. But it's not. But when you're here, it's not
something
that.
I think about, and it's something that they're oh, when you go to school, how are you afraid and stuff?
Yeah.
I'm no.
So we have the same thing when we're thinking about Syria or Jordan or any number of places.
I agree completely.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah, that's cool. Anyone else have something you would add to that? And then I'm gonna.
I think the way that Syrians think about the U.S. is much different than Spain, but they see it as the ultimate goal, I guess. All Syrians want to go to the U.S. and I think something that they don't know is that it's not what it used to be, I guess.
Yeah.
It's I already made up my mind. After I get my degree and start my career, I'll definitely want to leave the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Because you have that option, or your orientation is in the world. Yeah.
It's it's not as welcoming, I'd say, as it used to be, the U.S.
Okay. Or it doesn't. Okay. Well, it doesn't. It's not necessarily. You could say it's not necessarily as welcoming as a lot of other people imagine it to be.
Yeah.
Okay, that's something. Do the two of you have anything you would add? What's a stereotype? What's something that people think in Croatia, but you're nah, that's not necessarily how it is?
Well, I actually have the opposite of what they don't expect to be here. I feel like a lot of Europeans, not even Croatians specifically, aren't ready for the sheer amount of patriotism Americans show. The flags everywhere. Americans wear shorts with the American flag on it. That's not a thing. You would never catch a single genuine Croatian citizen walking around.
Except unless they're going to a game.
That's the difference. I feel Croatians have a lot of pride when it comes to sports. We have our national team. I mean, after the World Cup, there's riots in the streets for both of the past two of them, versus the patriotism that the U.S. shows is very different. Like we don't have a national soccer. I mean, we have a national soccer team, but it's not as like unified as it would be like the entire country in Croatia.
Yeah.
When we have the World Cup, it's like the entire country watches it. Here, it's like I feel most people who watch the World Cup are like connected to like their like non-American ancestry.
Yeah, well, I think that just the first thing you said about being just the patriotism, the level of patriotism in the United States is really profound.
Being like, that's, I think, like what you asked earlier, like being American, I feel like that's a big part of how I like categorize it, is just that like, not obsession with the US, but it's much more, like me being Croatian is just like, I have brown hair, I'm Croatian.
Yeah,
this is just a
I
fact
got you.
about
But,
me.
there's like almost this kind of obsession with loving the country in this weird way. Yeah, I hear that. Yeah. Final, that's cool. Like, it's bizarre to me, but Do you have a final thought, like what you see that?
So I kind of agree with him. I think that, well, all of my extended family, except for like my third cousin, my dad's third cousin is in the US now or in Canada. And so I think like the ultimate goal is for a lot of the people I know in the Middle East to come to America. But at the same time, they kind of shit on Americans.
Yeah.
Like they're like, don't act American.
Yeah. So people love it, but they take, especially Europeans, man, they take this opportunity to put it down, but love it at the same time, which is really kind of odd in a way, but.